Bet you weren't expecting this one, were you? I mean, if you didn't look at the title or thumbnail, then that cold open would have caught you completely off guard. I'm like a modern-day Quentin Tarantino. So what's been going on with me? What have I been doing over this slight absence? Well, to give a brief synopsis, like last time on Areeon Ball Z. After the Earthbound video, I went through the painful torture of actually playing Mother 3 again. So right after that, I wrote a 75-page summary of the game's story, then immediately deleted all that work. After that brilliant plan fell short because I didn't want to make a 9-hour video, I started another project, got 1/3 of the way through making it, and then completely ditched it because I had the foresight of a toddler. I probably opened and closed Dolphin like 200 times trying to get everything I needed. Okay, I think I got everything. I forgot the handoffs footage. But there actually was a silver lining in all my laziness and procrastination, because I played a lot of multiplayer games and got struck by a bunch of questions at once. Questions like, how do I play the exact same maps every time and still have it feel completely fresh? What keeps me coming back to play the same game over and over for so many hours? Why does Diet Dr. Pepper suck complete ass? Also, why does every fictional character have them doing this pose? All important questions that most people don't pay attention to just because of how good of a job game devs do to mask the fact that you're just doing the exact same thing in the exact same place at the exact same time. Well, not doing the same thing, but we'll get to that. And that brings us to the biggest factor in multiplayer game design, the maps. Level designers are the most important part of any game development team because without them, there'd be nothing to play. Whether it be the mystical giant maps, the ability to go anywhere you want that comes from Rockstar Games, or the brain-dead Sotark's brand of wanna see me click 2 sides of my screen and back, wanna see me do it again, in Osu. Both are equally as important to the replayability of a game, and a game can be made or broken by shitty maps. And don't twist my words here by thinking that good maps are the end-all be-all of a multiplayer game, but if you don't spend a lot of time making them, then you better be praying to God that your gameplay functions independently and is actually good for people to want to play it. Like, I love Tekken, but its stages do basically nothing for the game. And that's fine because the gameplay works without it. And I also need to preface this by saying, I'm not a game designer, nor am I a competitive gamer, as crazy as that sounds by looking at these incredible frags. So take a lot of this with a grain of salt. Also, I haven't played these games, so for all I know, they could be masterclasses of map design where nothing can compare to them. I'm sorry, but I'm not covering them here. But of all the games that I have played that gave me these ideas, there's one game that stands a cut above the rest. The game that has been using the same maps for years and still feels fresh every time. No, it's not League of Legends. I'm not going to subject myself to that. Counter-Strike is the purest FPS game out there. It's the Heisenberg's meth of shooters.
Why don't you just fucking die already?
You should kill yourself.
It's a game renowned for its simplicity and high skill ceiling, and its maps are really no different. Simple, but with enough under the hood to keep you coming back. CSGO should really be held as a gold standard for map design. It's the strongest case study I can think of for maps that are simple in concept but infinitely replayable because of it. And if you think that this praise sounds a bit loaded, bitch, I'm Slavic. Counter-Strike is in my blood. Replayability is a word you're going to hear me a lot on this topic because it's the bread and butter of any multiplayer game. Without it, there is no game. The best way to increase replayability is variety. The ability to have every match give you its own unique flavor. The simplest way to do this is to have every map be completely symmetrical, but while this solves any issue of imbalance between the two sides, the issue of variety is very prevalent. Look at a game like chess. While perfectly balanced and given the possibility of anything happening with the only variable being player skill, you can theoretically make the perfect replayable skill-based game with it. Checkmate.
Alright, good move, good move.
But as any experienced chess player would tell you, the biggest flaw with this idea is that after hundreds of hours, every game begins to feel the same. Checkmate.
Again.
Top-level chess is less of a competition of adaptation and being able to understand what your opponent's gonna do next, and more of who memorizes more board positions than the other.
Why do you want to get involved with something that is mainly rote and prearrangement?
Thankfully, the solution to this is pretty simple because not every game needs to be chess. Just like how not every game needs to be 100% perfectly balanced for both sides to have fun. This is what makes the balancing nightmare of variety and simplicity such a fine line to walk. CSGO's solution to this problem, while occasionally unbalanced, is the best of both worlds. In CSGO, there is a clear attacking and defending side. It's these two sides that are the basis for the game's balancing and the genius mapping behind it. On most 3-lane maps, which is the competitive standard for CSGO most of the time, terrorists leave their spawn and go into a middle area where they get a choice between A or B site. This is great because it immediately prompts the team to make a plan, maybe even try to get a read on what the counter-terrorists are expecting. Once the teams actually pick the site that they want to go to, they have to push through a choke point. This is where counter-terrorists come in. CTs are designed to have a positional advantage but with weaker guns, and with that advantage comes needing to change up their tactics to catch pushing Ts off guard. CSGO's team limits are important for this kind of balance because contrary to what third graders think, 5 can't be divided by 2, meaning one site will always be left slightly less defended. Especially considering if you do 2-1-2 between A, middle, and B respectively, where you need to watch multiple entrances. It gives the CTs even more incentive to switch it up, because if they don't, the less protected site will just get rushed down right at the start. But to get back to the Ts, when they meet the CTs at one of the choke points of the map, a couple of them are going to get picked off, and it's at this point where the players on T side can decide on whether to dedicate themselves to the site or rotate and try and take the now unprotected bomb site. Whatever happens, the bomb gets planted and then the roles of the two teams get reversed, with CTs finding the right entrances and Ts taking cover. All these random aspects caused by the placement of random walls around the map for cover or the location of bomb sites and spawns, they all give a minimum of 8 different possibilities each round. And I'm only talking the bare minimum, by the way. I haven't even mentioned things like smokes making artificial walls to block entrances. You can have T's bomb go to a different site from everyone else. Or you can have idiot silvers who block your way while you're trying to get out of the VAPs. That's me, by the way. And all this is to say, you can get thousands of variations off the same basic 3-lane map just from the basic Cs planted at the beginning of a round. So you might be gathering that there's an inherent formula for CSGO maps. 3 lanes, multiple entrances to each site. So what happens if someone doesn't adhere to these guidelines? Well, you get the release version of Overpass, which has 5 entrances to B and only 1 to A. So why would you ever go A when you're just going to funnel yourself in to die like a gambler late in his child support payments? This brings up a major design flaw in modern Counter-Strike mapping, in that they're more so based on gimmicks rather than good level design, like, oh cool, you made an ancient ruin, oh, I get blasted every time I turn the corner. Suddenly, I don't want to play anymore. Wow, who would have thought? Even Overpass had this problem at first, with its gimmick being, what if Germany? But nowadays, it's considered a staple of the active duty pool. It's a slow process, but when it does get solved, it works wonders. But that's enough about map creation, so let's talk about map destruction. So up until now, I've been talking about the basics of what makes a good map what it is, and Siege is definitely not that. But that being said, I've already gone over the normal stuff, the fundies, the footsies, the neutral, even, of map design. So this is more of an intermission of the wacky shit that's still pretty cool. Maps changing as you play them was, and still is, a really novel concept because it means that no 2 games are going to play out the exact same way, which, if you somehow don't remember, is really important for a multiplayer game. Rainbow Six Siege understands this, and most of the competitively viable maps, not Favela, have a perfect blend of destructible and indestructible walls. It's not an over-exaggeration to say that you actively make the map as the round goes on. The destructible walls aren't just a gimmick to get people interested in the game. They play a large role in every round because they can make new entrances to bomb sites, as Thermite says, literally making a new door. This wouldn't work if the game wasn't designed around the fact that the terrain is all destructible. And speaking of Thermite, there's a back and forth between attackers and defenders on wall reinforcements. Defenders are encouraged to reinforce walls to limit attacker options, but if the attackers want to counter this, they could run a hard breacher like Thermite, Hibana, or Maverick to cover those options. And then those defenders can counter this by running a character like Mute to stop them, etc. Or at least this is how it's supposed to go. They kind of threw a wrench into this by giving some random characters hard breaches. Like Thermite especially got cucked hard by the power creep, but the design philosophy is still there. By now it'd be pretty clear that attackers would probably get the most out of the destructible maps, which honestly they should. Attacking in a game like this will always be harder than defending, but both sides need to have access to it. On defenders, aside from direct ways like punching holes in walls to open a sight line or throwing an impact to make quick rotation, you get more abstract ways to take advantage of it. Look at the mirror trick, for example. Usually you'd want to reinforce as much of the site as possible to prevent it from just being hollowed out like a pumpkin. But with Mira, sometimes it's best to just put her windows on one reinforced wall adjacent to a regular one. Then when someone shows up, you just do your best Mike Ehrmantraut impression and line up your shot through the wall. Pretty sick. It's this strategic play that Siege players live for. It's the reason that they play the game. Well, not the reason that they play it. They don't really play it anymore, but we don't talk about that part. But the difference between every round and the ways attackers can infiltrate or defenders can block it off is a huge selling point of the game, and it wouldn't be possible without the creative use of the destructible environments. So, with this stupid consider the following segment done and over with, I'm gonna put my nostalgia goggles back on and talk about Smash Melee. Wait, why? Does this even count anymore? You know what? I don't care, because there's a point to be made here. So you remember the thing that I said about Tekken? Its stages do basically nothing for the game. And that's fine because the gameplay works without it. Yeah, there's a reason behind that. Fighting games are a very plain genre when it comes to level design. The per-game differentiation comes from the characters and their individual matchups. On average, you're just getting flat terrain, and at best, you're getting ringouts in a 3D fighter. Not much more, but again, it's not important. You don't need special maps for a fighting game. But Smash? Smash is completely different to that. Smash gets the best of both worlds with the different characteristics of each fighter and the unique stages with a bunch of potential. It's a freestyle fighting game. You don't need to follow flowcharts because the game's combat already flows on its own. You use your knowledge of the game and its characters to do your cool combos. Melee especially is like this because movement tech relies on platforms and stage positioning. This is so important because the combos and movement are what makes someone come back to a game to master it. Of the 29 stages in Melee, only 6 of them are used in the game's competitive rule set. If you look at them from a direct design standpoint, they're all pretty basic. 4 out of 6 are tri-plat and completely symmetrical, but when you look at what these simple designs do for the characters and their movement options, it begins to open up. Just take Final Destination as an example. The most basic possible design. It's just a single flat stage with no platforms. And while you think that this would be boring compared to every other tournament legal stage, its value comes from letting every character take advantage of it in their own unique ways to express themselves. I mean, you've got Falco lasers, Marth's chain grabs, Luigi's wave dash, Samus's super wave dash, Ice Climber's handoffs, Fox's juggles, the list goes on, and this is just a flat stage. Imagine what it's like with actual platforms. You can Waveland to get some combo extenders, Shield Drop to get even more options, it's great. Not to mention Yoshi's story with its small blast zones and other weird things popping up. It's basically designed to make a bunch of memories between you and your friend group. Like when Armada only survived a game because of some random off-screen Shy Guy, or when Randall caught some guy when he missed his recovery 3 times. I just realized not everyone's gonna know who Randall is. Randall's the Cloud. I don't know why we called him that, but say hi. A bit of randomness is fine if it doesn't get too excessive, but maybe you're into the complete fuckery side of things, and if that's the case, then Unfrozen Stadium is for you. With 4 different stage transformations and 2 of them having walls, this map is complete and utter fuckery, but it's my favorite, so I'm all for it. Unfreeze the stage, for God's sake. You may also be wondering why I haven't mentioned the other Smash games, namely Ultimate, and that's just because they mostly fall into the category of traditional fighters that I mentioned earlier. Let me explain. Of the 114 stages in Smash Ultimate, only about 15 of them are legal. And that's a 15 with a question mark because no one can agree on the stage list. This isn't normally a problem because Melee also has a limited stage list, but with Ultimate, the most popular maps are the ones that are just flat with no distractors on them. These maps worked in Melee because each character had their own way to take advantage of it. In Ultimate, however, in a way to make the game more competitive unfriendly, there is way less grounded movement tech. This puts the game more in line with other 2D fighters because it's more about the direct player versus player fights. So Ultimate's take on this idea from a competitive standpoint is very disappointing. In Nintendo's defense, that's more of a community thing, not a developer thing. I'd be hard-pressed to call it bad. But is there anything that's like the opposite of a case study? Like something you show someone and tell them, hey, don't do this, Overwatch. The point is Overwatch. I'm talking about Overwatch. All this was leading up to Overwatch. As I've stated before, the 2 most important parts of map design in multiplayer games is replayability and making everything in a player's arsenal count. So you think that Overwatch, a class-based shooter, mind you, that was noticeably inspired by Team Fortress 2, a game famous for being heavily designed around each class's abilities, would be good at this, right? Don't worry, it's not. Every Overwatch map follows this basic design. At best, you get slight branches sticking out for a potential flank, which gets immediately shut down because Overwatch is a very mobile game. You can cover everything super quickly. Because of this super choke-heavy design, every team comp has to have the same general characters that shuffle around each season whenever Blizzard fucks something up again. If you're on the offense, you're always needing some kind of shield tank to give safe pressure onto the other team. Another byproduct of this has to do with team fights always ending up the same way, that being trying to get picks until one of them builds more ults, and then you all press Q at the same time to win the team fight like you're playing World of Warcraft. Then either the teams reset and everyone's on equal footing again, or the attackers get to push for a few more seconds while everyone else respawns. It's part of what gives Overwatch the press Q to win stigma, and it's not completely wrong. It's fine to have a game with ultimate abilities, but when the entire thing is balanced around it, then you shut off every other option. I hate to say this, but compare this to TF2. It's also a game that has choke points, but the difference is only one class has a quote-unquote ultimate ability used to break through them. Choke points themselves aren't the problem. Any game with a clear attacking and defending side needs to have a wall between them to prevent a complete blowout on either side. TF2, or at least the most played maps of modern TF2, fixes this by giving you options to get around the metaphorical wall that doesn't just involve Kool-Aid Manning through it. There are usually flank routes with very defined purposes. Scouts can run through them and catch people off guard for picks. Spies can sneak past and destroy any sentries that might be there. Hell, demo men and soldiers can skip the whole flanking process altogether by using their excellent mobility to just be anywhere on the map. Overwatch has plenty of characters with parallels to TF2 classes, but the map design just straight up doesn't accommodate for this kind of idea. Take the first point of Hollywood, for example. Let's say I'm playing Genji and somehow manage to get to the singular flank route, which, by the way, is past the choke point, so no shot one of their tanks didn't see you. But if you do make it past, what's your reward for doing so? So tell me, what can you do now that you couldn't do before because of this route? Oh wait, timer's on screen. Actually, I don't really care. If you said faking a back cap on the site which just gets shut down by some random guy who was watching the point from the back as they should have been, then congratulations, you're now an Overwatch connoisseur. Here's your sexual misconduct allegation. If you look at it this way, in combination with the poor balancing, it's no wonder Overwatch had such a large dip in player base and critical response. And this just goes to show that multiplayer games can be made or broken without accommodating level design. And this was just the tip of the iceberg. I didn't even mention like PvE games where you're fighting against the environment, not other people, so the games can just have fun with whatever they're doing.